Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
I feel like I should be an ER doctor this morning. Good morning, Glenn.
Why is that? Because I got my pile of Kleenexes and
oh man, you are
sick.
Yeah, you're a medical walking experiment. So, but I gotta say, this morning your pull-in was classic, right? So typically at the coffee shop, we both get here like I don't know, half hour, 20 minutes early. That's just the way we're wired. Be early, don't be late, guys.
Right.
Hey, by the way, that was not drunk Mike. Drunk Mike was be late, leave early, right? But now I'm always
Glenn, Glenn,
right?
Never showed up. That's how I came in.
So this morning I'm out with our barista. We're just chatting, having a pre-coffee coffee, and this car comes into the lot doing 95 on a turn, and I felt like I was at what is it?
NASCAR.
Yeah, I felt like I was in the NASDAQ parking lot. Right. So, but you survived it. You survived the turn.
No, my
at 95.
theme today, coming in hot.
Coming in hot.
Right, because I normally come in half hour early or whatever, and I came in 2 minutes early. But I hit the bell. I rang the bell. No, I've been
Beautiful.
sick. Hey, I just got to share because I think this has something to do with sobriety. So, I've been sick the last couple of days, but the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, my sleep has been absolutely terrible.
Mm-hmm. Sleep is important.
Oh,
Glenn.
my God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of my priorities in sobriety because, it's just great. Quality sleep is great for you. So I was at the doctor yesterday, and I was like, hey, man, what kind of sleep meds? And I said, I only need 5. Just give me 5 because I know, hey, there are caution flags. And I'm like, just give me 5.
And he knows your scenario.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
Right,
full transparency. In
Right.
fact, we celebrate sobriety every time I go in, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
Which is important in sobriety.
Absolutely.
Your medical team has to know. Right?
Oh, totally.
So here's what he said. He goes, well, we got this. He's going down the catalog. And he says, hey, look. He said, every single one of these gets you 5 steps closer to a relapse.
Wow. So you took which one of the 5?
So you know what I said?
What'd you say?
I'm like, I'd rather stay awake for the rest of my life than take one of those suckers.
Right. Yeah.
And that's me. Now, I know people out there take,
Sure.
whatever.
Right,
but I'm just saying,
right.
He said, Glenn, I can't tell you how close the chemical composition is between booze and that. He says, I would suggest against it. I'm like, dude, I'm right. So instead, I took a Benadryl.
Oh, nice.
He said, Glenn, just take Benadryl.
Okay.
I'm like, okay.
Okay. Good.
And I got 7 hours sleep, and I got 87 points on my sleep score, and
Wow.
here I am. So.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm
Love
glad
you,
you're
brother.
here safely.
It's great being here, man.
Yeah,
Great being in the coffee shop.
Hey, guess what?
What?
Table for 3 today.
Oh, God, I love
I know.
Table for Threes. What's going on?
Super stoked about this. Poking around, the world of sobriety is small, but getting larger every day, right?
Yeah, but our connections on this thing called social media, we meet some great folks, including this gentleman.
Yeah, that's what happened here. We just stumbled upon each other on our social media paths, and so we've got Dean Anderson with us today, and he's an author. I always aspired to be an author.
Smart guy.
Yeah. I had to Google how to spell author. Is it ER or OR? I didn't know. But yeah. Hey, Dean. Good morning, man.
Morning, Dean.
Hey, good morning to you. You guys are a trip. Great answer.
Just ask my wife. She thinks we're hysterical.
We're on one.
Yeah.
And writer's a relative term. I don't know if that's what I am, but that's how it panned out.
Are you so what is the word for like struggling artists or whatever? Like they never have money. I mean, you write the book and I guess if you're Stephen King, you fall into the mix of, I don't know. How does that work?
I tell you this, I envy the ability of authors to write novels and that type of thing. I've got a few friends doing that, but I could never do that. This is You know what I love about this? This is kind of self-help in a way. And yes, it's about sobriety, but I think in some ways, how can I be wrong if it was my experience, right?
Right.
You can have an opinion about it, right? But you can't be necessarily wrong since I lived it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I sit. And I think it's easier to write that.
Yeah, Dean, that is so true. I mean, there's people that look at me and say, AAA doesn't work. I'm like, What?
Yeah, work for me.
Right. I'm like, it might not work for you, but you can't say it doesn't work because it's my experience. It's my story. So I love how you put that, Dean.
Right. And so the name of the book, if I could, is Finding Myself Sober. And I tell you, I got a book, a copy of the book, and it's a quick, solid read. And maybe it was quick and solid for me because it was so relatable to me.
Maybe you were absorbed.
I was totally absorbed in it because, and I'll let Dean do it because he's going to do it better than myself. But it's focused on the 12 principles of AA, right? So once again, kind of like what you said, Dean, how could you go wrong? These are well-tested principles. And I just love how you took your experience and then put those into those buckets of principles, spiritual principles from AA.
Yeah, thank you. And that had a huge impact on me because I don't think I was sober for more than maybe a year before somebody mentioned that there were principles attached to the steps in a 12-step program, right? So as I work the steps, as we all do, trying to sort of face what we've done in the past, make amends with people, and then get on the spiritual path. For me, I have trouble sometimes, and maybe people can relate to this, I have trouble retaining information that I read. Like I got to read a book 3 times before it sinks in, right? So as much as I love the text that we use in recovery, once somebody put these principles to each chapter or each step, right, I was able to look, and even to this day, 10 years sober, I can look at that list of principles and I can usually run down that list and say, okay, which one do I suck at today? And that's kind of how I've lived for quite a few years. And, and it can be different ones. A lot of them are courage. A lot of them it's humility, a lot of willingness. But I think I live in step 10, 11, 12, right? That's kind of my life. And I love that pocket because I don't want to be that guy that works the 12 steps over and over and over again. And I don't judge anybody that wants to work the steps because I know guys that do it once per year. I feel like I dealt with my past. I don't run from it. I use it to help other people. But for me, I want to live in 10, 11, 12. But that does not mean that I don't have to go back to one of these principles and say, okay, today, let's say it's courage, right? I have to go out and maybe write an inventory. Or today it's love because I'm really judging people out there and not acting right. And I need a little more brotherly love in my world. So for me, it's a daily check.
Right, exactly.
Point. It's a daily list to figure out not living right again. Where all the bad habits coming back.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
And that's what it's been for me. And I have to simplify things. I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to the program and it comes to 12-step recovery, I'd hate to call it dummy it down, but that's what I feel like. The more simple it is, the easier it is for me to work, and the less chance I have to sort of step off that path and start going a different direction or bring bad habits back.
I wonder with newcomers if we complicate things too much, right? Like at the first couple meetings, if they sit there and look, man, this is just like, or if their perception is, hey, this thing's pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my experience. My experience was
you came in with a notebook.
I did, but I thought it was I thought it was really complicated. I mean, I really did. I was hearing terms, I was hearing phrases, I was hearing about steps and then service and then surrender and I'm like, okay. And I remember one time in a meeting I said, and I'm probably less than a year in, but close to a year, and I said, somebody just give me the answer. Tell me what my priority needs to be here because I'm not getting it. So
really, yeah,
to your point, I was confused and overwhelmed.
So I like Dean's approach. Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah, when we came in, remember all the phrases and words and stuff that were up on the wall? I mean, sure. I think I just remember waterlogged and looking at those and kind of hating them at the time. I'm like, what does any of that mean? But I remember my world being an absolute huge amount of a pile of problems, let's say, right? All self-imposed crisis. But I remember this old timer told me, he's like, listen, just sit down for a second, shut your mouth. He's like, if you work these steps, the rest of that stuff is going to work itself out. I promise you. And I thought he was full of crap, and he was 100% right. And it really did. And quicker than I thought. It was probably my first year of sobriety was definitely the worst and the best year of my life.
Yep. Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah. And it's a scary time looking back on it. But I think what's cool about newcomers coming in, if you've got a good old timer in there, they'll bring that back to step 1 because if you just happen to have a step 7 meeting or something, you're going to blow that kid's head off.
Sure.
And they're not going to understand anything that's going on. Always bring it back to whether you're powerless and then talk about the unmanageability or the spiritual malady we have.
Right. Yep. I agree. I love in the beginning of the book, and I just like the way that you kind of intertwined your journey from the beginning of the book. And in the beginning of the book, you used one of my favorite phrases, which you were just sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? And I'm like, yep,
I know what that's like.
Totally get that. I mean, that's where I was October 13th, 2018. I was just so sick and tired of this same old thing. It was like Groundhog's Day, right? I'm like, come on, man, I can't do this another day. And that your day awakening was about 10 years ago now, right?
Yeah, I think I had a few. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I had probably a stack of 30-day chips a mile high, and I had just kept coming back and beating myself over and over again. And I think the time that scared me the most was when I went into treatment. I had that rock bottom, if you want to call it that. I had been probably going a month strong with just drinking and passing out about 3 times per day.
Sure. Yep. I
didn't even know what day it was. I was absolutely delirious, and I ended up in the hospital with about a 0.39. And they put me in treatment, and that was great. But I didn't come out, and I didn't change any of my behaviors. I stayed in the same world. I did the same activities. I still played softball. I did all these things that I did normally drinking. And within 5 months, I was back to the bottle again. So when it finally came around to 2013, I realized, and I had pushed the envelope far enough, and I realized that once I have a drink, all bets are off, and it just goes down a rabbit hole really quickly. And if I sat there and tried to figure out why I couldn't drink now like I drank when I was, let's say, 20, I'd lose my mind. I had to quit figuring out or trying to figure out why, and just realize I'm an alcoholic. This is the life, that I have now, but how can I make this life the best I've ever had and be happy? Because the first 10 times I tried to get sober, I didn't seek that out. I was just going through the motions, and I wasn't trying to
quit drinking. Right.
Yeah, I was spiritually bankrupt, but not filling that hole with anything new. And that's where I was at. And I'm so glad that I had people that knew what to do, right? Including my wife, who I knew from the program, and she was a couple years sober. But she looked happy, and she just walked and talked. And
didn't that just piss you off? Right?
Yeah. I had to pretend I wasn't attracted to her, because who wants to date the fat, crying, sweaty guy in the corner, right? I had to clean myself up.
That's awesome.
I couldn't even get a cup of coffee to my hand. It was a smoking meeting back then, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm ripping cigarettes. Man, I was a mess.
Yeah, right. So again, love the journey, love the principles, and I love the fact that it's an application. Like you said, it's kind of a bit of a self-help deal, and sure. Where it's just application. You're just looking at it, and you leave each chapter with a couple of questions. And I love that, because that's usually what happens to me in a meeting. I hear a statement, I turn it into a question into my head, because how does it relate to me? How does that apply to my life right now? Right. This guy's struggling with his wife. You would think that might be a waste of time comment in a meeting, but I ask myself, well, hold on a second. Am I being the best husband I could be right now? Am I using the principles of the program to be the best man I can be?
So, Dean, some people write books for themselves, right? It's almost like a self-exercise and
cathartic, right?
Yeah, that's God. You always come up with the perfect words. Yeah, cathartic. And then some people are trying to get a message across. What was your approach here? Was it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think it was. It was something, because we all know that our kids, if you have any, they could go down this path, right? And I'm not saying either of my daughters would, but it's definitely a legacy to leave behind. But it's also, we're always in that service mode, right? And we know that we can, as sponsors, help as many newcomers as we can coming in, or sponsees that we've had for a long time. But for me, I just thought, all right, what's the reach, right? If I finally figured out how to be happy, sober, and live this abundant and, life full of gratitude, how can you get it out to the most people possible? And like you said, the recovery world's small, but boy, is it getting bigger with social media. I've got friends now across the country that I've never met in person, and we used to be able to do that through the pandemic, through like Zoom meetings and stuff like this, but it's just blossomed into this huge thing. So when I started writing it, it was because I felt comfortable enough with 10 years or 9 years at the time with my sobriety that I thought maybe it could be useful to somebody who felt like I did when I came in, where I needed it simplified. And that is a very, and Mikey might think the same thing, that it was simplified, that book. It's just like saying, all right, here's my experience, here's the principle. But after it's done, I always ask that one question: how free do you want to be? Right? Because that's your choice. How free do you want to be in sobriety? And for me, that was why I posed those questions. And my wife was smart enough to say, you ought to put a journal entry at the end of it.
Sure.
Because a lot of people in recovery love to write. I wasn't a journaling guy. That wasn't me. I didn't come in with a notebook. I could barely write. But
that's how I was, man. I mean, that's how I couldn't function.
I tried I tried to sit and absorb. That's all I could do. Couldn't function at all. So I hope that answers your question. But for me, it was a bunch of things wrapped into one. But if we can help as many people as we can, I said to my wife when I wrote this, I'm like, listen, if this gets into one person's hand and it makes them decide they want to get sober, then the whole thing was worth it.
That's exactly what we
do with the podcast.
Have said and say about the podcast.
That's our mantra.
Like, help one person. And we have facts that we've done that because it's helped me.
Yeah, right. Help me. So that's two.
That's two. Right? We've exceeded expectations.
So the one challenge I had in sobriety is, again, you've got these principles.
Wait, you only had one challenge?
Well, one of the challenges, thank you for correcting me.
One of
the challenges is, and I think you answered it early on, because you've got these principles, and they're kind of like the 10 Commandments, like how can I be good at all of them, right? So which one's most important? Do I not murder? Do I not steal? In the book, I read the book, and I asked myself the question, well, and I think you answered it, where do I need the most work? Because I think it's an ebb and flow. Someday I'm more honest and less responsible. Other days I'm more spiritual and less willing. I don't think I have a concrete answer, but I guess what I'm asking you is, what if you had to prioritize? And I think you did the book a couple of times. You said, "Look, I think this is the most important one." Right? Going back to that guy who's confused, what's the most important spiritual principle that one should hang on to and try and follow?
I think it's a two-part answer, and I hope I'm not trying to stretch that out. But I think that honesty, because step one is so important. They always say that's the only step we need to do 100% correctly, with 100% of ourselves. Because we are, or at least me, I'll speak for me. I was such a good liar at the end, or maybe I should say bad liar, right? Everything was a lie. I was either covering my tracks or trying to make myself look better, or trying to lie to a doctor. It didn't matter.
And the mental energy that takes, Dean.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, like you can't remember anything you did yesterday.
Oh, my gosh. It just sucks the soul out of you.
It does. And you're just wrapped in shame and guilt anyway. And then you're just lying upon lying upon lying. So I think honesty is what kicks off the whole thing. Because if you can't be honest, and that's why they say rigorous honesty is what saves us, right? And we don't even know what that means. It took me 2 years to be able to even come close to telling the truth, nowhere near 100% of the time, and I think now I catch myself in lies, and I've mentioned that in the book. I'll even call myself out in the middle of it and be like, no, that was bullshit, and then people look at me, only a person in recovery will understand it, and they'll look at it and be like, wow, okay, good catch, Dean, but if it's somebody who's not in recovery, they're like, this guy is off the wall. But my second part of the answer is I certainly live in 10, 11, 12, and to me, 10 is that spot check that we always need to do every day where, all right, where are we screwing up? How do we make amends quickly if we do something wrong? But spirituality was such a kick for me in step 11 because I had never meditated. I made fun of everybody that meditated the first 4 years I was sober. And then I picked up a new sponsor, and he's like, he's this Harley riding biker, trucker. He's not a guy you picture meditating, right?
Right. Hamada.
Yeah, and he was hardcore about it, and he was not making that an option for me. He's like, no, this is something you got to do. We all got a racing mind. So I started that, and then I think the service part of it for me, I can tell you that all those times I tried to get sober first, and that I failed, I had those three sides of the triangle, right? I had the unity from going to those meetings that I loved and had the companionship. I had the recovery, so I had worked the steps, but service was missing. And in my first home group, they would die hard about making sure you took a position, that you did service work, no matter what that looked like. A service is a very wide, category that you could do a ton of things. That's what saved my life, was the service part of that. So I would say service is one of the most important. Honesty kicks it off. Service keeps you going.
Well, service gets you out of your own head, gets you out of your own space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things I love about the book and I love about this conversation is where I find myself and what, in retrospect, what the program did for me. And it was so much more than just the quit drinking thing, right? So, and that's why I love that, finding myself sober. Okay, here I am. I'm sober. Now what? You know, and Glenn has asked that question multiple times. Okay, great. I'm not drinking. Now what? Right? And what I love about the book is it's a bit of a foundational. You can build blocks foundationally on these principles, and now you're really finding sobriety. You know, now you're finding sobriety. You're not just dry. You know, you're sober. You're living life to its fullest if you're willing.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was a 3-category thing for me when I got sober this time. I had to get through the steps, and I had to get where I was semi-sane again, right? Mm-hmm. But at that point, what I decided probably a year into sobriety, I was probably 40 or 50 pounds heavier at the time too. And I just said, all right, this is going to be a mental, physical, and spiritual thing, and also some emotional intelligence, right? Because I wanted to be there for my kids. I might have not completely been absent as a father, but I wasn't present, right?
Sure, right.
You're there, and I was there for everything I needed to be, but was I really there? You know, and that kind of wore on me and made me feel awful for the years that I was semi-mentally absent. So I wanted to fit all those categories. So I worked out, I did the meditation, I tried to be there for every single thing my kids needed me for. And so it was a 4-part thing for me where it wasn't just being dry. And I think that's probably why I finally have some peace after 10 years where I wake up and I just want to tackle the day. I don't ever wake up not grateful now.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's fantastic. That is powerful strength, man.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So,
and it's been fun. That's the weird part, right? Like, I didn't expect it to be fun. That blows my mind.
I know. It's like super fun. I mean, and look,
superpowers.
Shit still happens, you know. Shit still happens in my life.
Not perfect.
Absolutely not perfect. But man, oh man, it's fun.
Work the steps harder.
Yeah, right. No, I just need to. I need to surrender more.
Do you guys notice at this point where something does happen, like a crisis, and you're actually the calm one in the room?
Oh, and people are turning to me. Really, the drunk?
That just happened to me over the last week. Absolute nuclear bomb, and I'm sitting there now. I will say, you know, when the bomb went off, I mean, I immediately like, you know, holy fook, and then you know, my immediate thought was, I've got tools to deal with this.
Right.
That is what I told myself for 10 minutes. I'm like, start using the tools. You've been through bombs. We will get through bombs. There's nothing we cannot get through sober.
Right. Yep. That's
and you don't need to say anything unnecessary. Like now I can bite my tongue.
Yeah.
Boy, did stuff come out of my mouth that I regretted.
Or you used to, you used to instant react. Now it's like, hey,
pause.
Let me assess. Let me pause.
Right.
You know,
yeah, the pause is tough.
You know, pause, and everybody else is like freaking around, and I'm like, no,
not going to do it.
We don't need to, man.
Well,
right.
you're Philly, right? Philly, Chicago, and me, Boston.
Yeah.
Like that is quick mouth, sarcastic,
right?
And you know, so that pause is really, really extra.
But man, I'll tell you what, I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Me too.
So Dean, two things to wrap up, and I'd love to
with you, Dean.
Yeah,
thanks
love to chat more,
in,
but want to hit 2 pieces of business. Number one, the number one compelling reason people should just decide to, you know, to grow in their journey. Your book obviously would be a recommendation from me, but other resources. How would you suggest people start their journey in sobriety? What would be your, because we got a lot of sober curious out there. What would be your number one? What would be some tools you would use or resources that you might recommend for people?
I would think, you know, and you boys would probably agree that I think a 12-step program was the only thing that worked for me. And I tried everything else to get sober, and it did not work, right? So that's what I would say first and foremost. And there's probably different 12-step programs that work, but for me, I'm in the same category you folks are. But I think that's number one, and you got to surround yourself with sober people, even if it's temporary. I'm not saying to dump every friend you've got, because you probably grew up with them like I did in my old neighborhood. I love those guys, but I had to surround myself with sober people, get in the middle of the herd, as they say, realize even if their advice sounds crazy, they're spot on because they've been through it, and find a way to forgive yourself and love yourself again, because once you do, you'll be able to love everybody better than you've ever loved people before.
I love that. So let's get to the business part. How do people find you? How do people get the book?
I think the easiest way, it is available on a couple of different websites and links, but I think the easiest way is to go to Amazon. Just type in Finding Myself Sober or my name, and you'll find that link, and just click on it. And if you like it or hate it, write me a review. I don't care one way or the other, but I hope it helps somebody. I hope that if you have a relative, a friend who's struggling, buy it and put it in their hands, and maybe they'll read it, and I'm easy to contact too. So, I mean, if anybody wants my phone number or anything, or any link to get to me on Facebook or LinkedIn, I'd be more than willing to give it to people. So,
and we'll have the link in our resource room. So, whenever you're listening to this podcast, you can go to our resource room. Just look for the link to this.
You guys know it's life or death, and that's how I look at it now.
It really is.
Even though we're a few years out, it's still life or death.
Right.
So I work it every single day.
Yep.
Surrender and work.
Dean, this has been great, man.
Dean, thank you so much for coming in, man.
Thank you so much, and good luck on the distribution of the book. I hope it gets into a lot of hands, because a lot of people need hope. So
we'll look forward to our next coffee.
Yeah, sure. If you ever want to have me on again, I'd be the first one to jump at it. So,
awesome.
And I hope you both feel better, or at least you, Glenn.
At least me, yeah.
All right, Dean. Have a great day, man.
Thanks,
you.
Dean. Take care, brother.
Right,
hey, Glenn. See you.
All right, man.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.